Good evening. My name is Tim Andrews, and thank you for joining our live interactive telephone town hall. We're hosting tonight's event to give Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger the opportunity to hear directly from you and answer your questions about the issues facing Central Virginians, their families, their businesses, and their communities. Now, as I mentioned, this is an interactive forum. Congresswoman Spanberger will be taking as many questions as she possibly can during this live event. So if you have a question and you're joining us by phone, you can simply press *3 on your telephone keypad at any time. Now, at that point, you'll be placed in line to speak with a member of our staff. They'll take down your name, the area you're calling from, and the next time you hear me call your name, you will be live on the call and able to ask your question directly. You can also ask a question by submitting one through the portal right below our online streaming player at spanberger.house.gov. Again, that's spanberger.house.gov/live. Now, if you're watching on Facebook Live tonight and wish to ask the Congresswoman a question, we encourage you to visit that online streaming portal. Again, it's spanberger.house.gov/live, so you can submit your question. Additionally, if you would like to receive updates from our office via email, just press *6 on your phone keypad right now, and an operator will collect your email address. Again, that's *6. Well, we should receive a lot of questions during this event, so if we're unable to address your specific question after the event, please call our district office at 804-401-4110 during normal business hours. And again, if you have any questions throughout the event, simply press *3 on your telephone keypad or type them right below the streaming player. Now let's begin this live interactive telephone town hall by welcoming Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger. Congresswoman?
Thank you so much, Tim. Hello, everyone. I'm Abigail Spanberger, and I represent Virginia's 7th Congressional District in Congress. I am so happy to have the chance to speak with you all this evening. I look forward to hearing your questions and answering as many of them as I possibly can. This week, we have had a very productive work period here in the district, and I've been meeting directly with Virginians across the 7th District and across our communities. During our visits, we've discussed the economic impact of the American Rescue Plan, specifically on small businesses, restaurants and breweries, the impact of the American Rescue Plan on what it means for the state of the Commonwealth's ability to support our local communities, and the American Rescue Plan's benefit to our local public schools who are utilizing direct support to be able to get the school year started off right and safe. Across the 7th District, some of our counties are already back to school, so I hope any students or parents have had a good adjustment for those who've already gone back, and for those who are headed back soon, I wish you the very best of luck. I've been really spending a lot of time hearing from people, which of course is the favorite part of my job, so that I understand what we continue to need to do as we continue in our recovery. I have also been excited to hear from local leaders about efforts and ongoing efforts to expand broadband internet access, particularly across the rural communities that I represent. I was very excited that the General Assembly and Governor Northam approved $700 million, a major investment for expanded connectivity across the Commonwealth, and have been able to expedite the time frame by which we expect in the future to have broadband access across the entire Commonwealth. For those in districts where it's pretty difficult to maybe stream this town hall and you're listening on the phones, I'm excited about the progress that we're seeing. Certainly, broadband connectivity has long been an issue that I have prioritized, but to see real movement on this issue is important. I'm also hopeful and excited about the Bipartisan Infrastructure and Jobs Act, which is a bill that passed through the United States Senate. I look forward to us taking a vote on it in the United States House so that we can put it forward to the president. This bill makes historic and important investments in roads and bridges, broadband connectivity, our electrical grid, electric vehicle charging stations, and the list goes on, of physical infrastructure. And so it's exciting to see the progress of this bill so far. And I continue to be vocal about the need to bring this bill for a vote on the House floor as soon as possible. Because I am excited about seeing here in Central Virginia what it means in terms of job creation. Many of you know Virginia was just ranked #1 in the state, the #1 state in the country for business, #1, and that's a place that I think is prominent, important, and a place I'd like for us to stay. So I am focused on how we can keep Virginia's economy growing and competitive, particularly as we continue to rebuild from COVID. Physical infrastructure investments really help us do that, which is why I'm excited to vote for this bill. These investments are frankly long overdue, and they're good for both workers and businesses. They create new jobs, but they also ensure that the physical infrastructure that our communities need are strengthened and secure, frankly. So I'm excited about this. And before we go on to the questions from listeners, from viewers, I do want to speak about the situation in Afghanistan. The situation in Afghanistan is heartbreaking. It's heart-wrenching. We have certainly heard in our office from constituents who have family members who are in Afghanistan trying to get out. We have assisted veterans who have been so devoted in their efforts to ensure that their translators or those they worked with can get a special immigrant visa or continue in the process for their special immigrant visa and can get out of the country safely. And we have heard from, and I've spoken to veterans who served in Afghanistan over the 20-year period of our war there. And so I want to thank every veteran who served for their service. For every family member who's been in touch with our office, we continue to work on your behalf. And it's a very difficult time for many people across Central Virginia, the country, and frankly, the world. And it has our full attention. Many of you know I'm a former CIA case officer, and I worked counterterrorism cases for the entirety of my time with the agency. And that background leads me to really want to ask questions about what goes right, what goes wrong, and certainly what we've seen in the past week in Afghanistan has demonstrated significant challenges. So I, as a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, will be interested in understanding how we got to where we are today. Certainly 20 years worth of decisions that have been made in the conflict, but also decisions relative to the past few days and our efforts to evacuate U.S. personnel, U.S. citizens, and Afghans, particularly SIV applicants, so that special immigrant visa applicants. The situation on the ground is changing rapidly. We are having briefings, classified and unclassified, and I am very, very engaged on this issue. I have long-term concerns about those who will suffer under Taliban rule, and I will continue to press the administration to ensure that Afghanistan remains top of mind, even if we do not maintain the military presence there that we have had for the past 20 years. And I just want to say thank you to the team that we have in our office who's been doing so much advocacy and work on behalf of the constituents who have been calling with their personal stories, with their situations of real dire circumstance and need. And it's been our absolute honor to be in the process of helping those who have reached out. If anyone does need anything from our office, I always welcome you to call 804-401-4110. You can also go to our website for Get Help. And so please be in touch if there's anything else that we can do related to Afghanistan or any other issue. But without further ado, I look forward to answering your questions, and I thank you for joining.
Thank you for that update, Congresswoman. And we do have a lot of questions coming in this evening. If you would like to ask a question and you're joining us via phone, simply press *3 on your telephone keypad at any time. That'll get you in queue to ask your question. Also, if you're joining us online, you can type your question right below the streaming player. Our first caller this evening comes from Henrico County, and forgive me if I mispronounce your name, Prashant. Is that correct?
Yes. Hey. Yes. Good evening. Yes, it
Hi,
is Prashant Vinjamori. Hey. Hello, Congresswoman. Good evening. I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to ask one particular thing because the $1 trillion infrastructure bill, what does it give for Henrico's residents in terms of infrastructure? Are we looking at repaving, or what are the things that are in scope for us in Central Virginia? Thank you.
Prashant, thank you so much for this question. To speak to Henrico County specifically, I'll go back to the American Rescue Plan because this is a place where dollars went straight to localities, particularly in terms of schools. So I believe the number was a little over $40 million went directly to Henrico County public schools. This is an investment in the locality. Each of the 10 counties I represent, and certainly every locality across the Commonwealth, received funds directly to support their needs to reopen, be that installing new HVAC units, be that hiring COVID-specific staff to help with mental health issues or learning loss, et cetera. Notably, you were talking about the infrastructure bill. So that bill, the way that it is structured is the dollars will be pushed out to the states for different programming. So at this point in time, there's not a firm estimate. We still need to get it passed in the House and sent to the president's desk. I can't provide an estimate of what that would actually mean locally to Henrico County, but I will say that across the Commonwealth of Virginia, we have more than 5,000 roads that are classified as being in poor condition. We have just under 600 bridges across the Commonwealth of Virginia that are classified as being in poor condition. And this is real infrastructure, physical infrastructure that needs to be upgraded. It is not only an issue of strengthening our roadways, our highways, and our bridges, but it's also a safety issue. Specific again, and this would apply to all of our counties, but Prashant asked about Henrico, investments in our electrical grid, strengthening our electrical grid is an important effort towards resiliency. Certainly for those of us who experience from time to time electrical outages during significant storms, upgrades across the board and strengthening our electrical grid across the board is going to be important on two fronts. One, to ensure the safety, security, and resiliency, but also the efficiency and the effectiveness, particularly within the construct of discussing climate change and individual and larger scale investments in renewable energy. We do want to ensure that that electrical grid is working as efficiently as possible so that there's no energy loss across that distribution. But we also want to ensure that the energy grid can handle solar panels on individual homes, solar farms in some places, and certainly the massive investments that the Commonwealth is going to see with offshore wind off the coast of Virginia.
Our next live caller comes from Richmond. Stephen Grimsley is on the phone. Hi, Stephen. Thank you for holding.
Hi. Thank you for allowing me to ask a question, and I appreciate your service to our country, ma'am. So I'm Steve Grimsley, a U.S. Army veteran in Richmond, Virginia, and 4 years ago I was diagnosed with severe glaucoma. I was prescribed 3 different medications, which total $130 per month with insurance, and without insurance, it's a lot more. It costs a lot more. So as a part of the Build Back Better agenda that the Biden administration is trying to propel forward, it would lower prescription drug costs for Americans. May I count on you to support the Biden administration's Build Back Better plan?
Stephen, I would love to answer that question, but let me just first tell people a little bit about, and I love this question because I'm very excited about the component of the Build Back Better plan that you're mentioning. So there's a component of the bill, which is a bill that I have separately supported, that would allow for the basic framework of it is that Medicare is able to negotiate the cost of its prescription drugs. Currently, that is not permitted. By law, Medicare is prohibited from negotiating the cost of prescription drugs. The VA, as a similar example, they can negotiate the cost of the prescription drugs, and that savings is important. We are a capitalist country. I'm proudly a capitalist. I believe Medicare should be able to negotiate the cost of their prescription drugs. And what our bill does in the Lower Drug Costs Now Act, which is part of the Build Back Better agenda, is it allows Medicare to be able to negotiate the cost of prescription drugs. Again, it's currently legally prohibited from doing so, so we would need a law change there. And then it allows for those cost savings, those negotiated rates, to convey to other prior insurers. So this is important because it leverages the strength and the breadth of Medicare to be able to conduct those negotiations and allows for others who are not on Medicare to be able to benefit from some of those negotiated rates. I'm excited about this bill. I voted for it in the 116th Congress, again in the 117th, and if it is part of a package we move forward in the near-term future, then yes, I am very supportive of this provision and more broadly, the Build Back Better agenda. And Stephen, I want to thank you for your service and certainly thank you for for sharing some of the challenges that you face as it relates to the cost of prescription drugs. And I will take this moment, any veterans who are on the line who may face challenges with the VA or have questions about the VA, we do have team members focused on constituent services that can provide support if you are facing any challenges dealing with the VA. And so please, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to be in touch with our office about VA-related questions or issues.
We have both online questions coming in, live callers coming in. Star 3 on your telephone keypad. Just press star 3 if you'd like to ask your question live. Or if you're streaming online, you can simply type your question right below the streaming player. And we'll get some online questions here in just a moment. But first, I want to go to Harsh Patel, who's been on the line holding. Hi, you're live with Congresswoman.
Hello, Congressman. This is Harsh Patel. I live in Glen Allen. I really thank you for your service, and I have a couple questions. First question is in reference to inflation. I'm into import-export business. Well, not export, just import business, and I'm struggling with every month our shipping costs from abroad, like from China to here, U.S., or any part of the country to U.S. Our shipping costs are going through the roof. And that is like kind of really hitting our wallet. At this point, we have decided not to get into the import. We have decided not to import any products, and which is going to drive the price for the everyday items up because of the simple supply and demand formula. And the second thing is, what are we going to do if we are spending trillions of dollars in infrastructure bill? How are we going to ensure that that is going to help American companies and not some foreign companies who are going to come and going to prefabricate a bunch of building materials offshore, and they're going to dump it in this country? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Harsh, I appreciate these questions. The first one related to the shipping costs that you're experiencing with your business, and larger issues related to inflation. Some of the challenges that you mentioned are challenges that I have heard from other constituents across the district. Notably, I serve as chair of the Conservation and Forestry Subcommittee of the larger Agriculture Committee, and in that role, I have been working very closely with the Virginia Loggers Association and those in the forestry business. And certainly, I think anybody who's been in a hardware store over the past year has really seen the fluctuation, both the peak and then the return to some level of normalcy of lumber prices. So much of this comes down to supply and demand. And in fact, in your discussion related to your import business, that is a key crux of some of the challenges. Through the ebbs and flows of COVID with some of the outbreaks that we've seen, the supply chain has been pinched. We've seen it specifically with meat processing plants. We've certainly seen it with lumber. And we've seen it with the ability to import products from other countries based on the standards and the process of allowing items or to enter the country. And so depending on, you didn't mention the types of products that you import, but certainly we have seen supply chain issues there. This is something that I'm highly attuned to, particularly given my work as it relates on the Agriculture Committee, not just in the forestry sector, but also in the livestock sector. We've seen real challenges within the supply chain that has led to price fluctuation. But as I'm following the situation closely, across the board, economists are making estimates that we will see some evening out. That is what I'm watching for and looking towards. But when it comes to imports of the nature that your business is engaged in, so much of that recovery and that leveling out of normalcy really will be dependent on where we are with the virus, because then it's not just the supply chain here in the United States that may face challenges, but supply chain at the country of origin from where you're importing. And certainly we've seen closures and pinch points across the way. And then the other question you had asked about was infrastructure and making sure that those jobs and those investments are here in the United States and benefiting domestic companies. That is a tremendous priority. The infrastructure bill has provisions related to local hires. The infrastructure bill has provisions related to ensuring that this work is firmly grounded here in the United States, and that U.S. companies and U.S. workers are doing the work to rebuild our nation's roads and bridges that are in disrepair, to strengthen our electrical grid. And in fact, just last week, I was out visiting the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the IBW, and their training facility. And these are the highly skilled workforce that work and will be doing the work of improving upon our electrical grid and installing electric vehicle chargers across the country. So it's exciting to know who are the folks who are going to be doing some of the toughest, most exciting jobs that we'll be bringing as part of this infrastructure package.
Congresswoman Ken Dye has joined us online and is streaming the event through the portal, spanberger.house.gov/live. And he typed in a question, more a request, would like to have you talk about your position on the John Lewis Act.
Thank you, Mr. Dye. I am a proud co-sponsor of the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act. This is a bill that we put forth in the last Congress. I was a co-sponsor then. I was proud to vote for it. And this year, we just reintroduced it this year, and I am an original co-sponsor, and I look forward to voting for it again when it comes before the House. Across the country, there's so much discussion about barriers to voting, challenges to voting, efforts to impede our fellow citizens from being able to vote. And I had the honor of serving a very brief time with Congressman Lewis, who put his life on the line, who spent his youth and then every year of his life working to ensure that every American has the ability to cast a ballot, that every American has the ability to impact change or use his or her voice through that vote. And so it is such an honor that the bill is named after him. And the basic premise is that we want to ensure that elements of the Voting Rights Act are strengthened and secured into the future so that we can protect that sacred right here in the United States to vote. And certainly in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we have a state legislature that has passed its own version of a Voting Rights Act that has also worked hard to ensure that voting is a straightforward and accessible responsibility, duty, or right of our fellow citizens. And I would note that this last year, when I was at the polls, I met a gentleman who was a short haul truck driver, and he was saying that typically every year on election day, and of course in Virginia it's every year on election day, he would get his schedule to be able to see where was he going that day, and would he be able to make it back in time to cast a vote, to cast his ballot before the end of the day. And this year, because of early voting that was put in place in Virginia, he was able to vote days in advance. And he said he knew with certainty that he could use his voice, he could cast his ballot, and then he could go to work on election day and do his job. And so, these are the elements that are important to me. These are the stories that drive my work on wanting to ensure that every person across our country who is eligible to vote has the ability to do so in a straightforward manner. And we do see some roadblocks being put in place. And certainly our country at times has a history of that, which is why the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Act is so important and why I support it.
By the way, just a reminder for all of you joining us on this live telephone town hall, if you would like to receive regular updates from Congresswoman Spanberger, simply press *6 on your telephone keypad right now. Then a member of our staff will take down your email address so you can get those important updates from our office. And if you have a question you would like to ask this evening, simply press *3 on your telephone keypad. Or if you're joining us online, again, you can type it right below the streaming player. Bruce Milhans is on the line right now. Hi, Bruce. Thank you for holding for the Congresswoman. Go right ahead.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. Congresswoman, something I've been wondering about for years is, and Afghanistan really brings it to the front, is obviously the United States is not going to do a good job in engagement in the Middle East. And I would like to know what your views are on how we could better handle things in that very difficult region, and with particular reference to Saudi Arabia, because I do not understand why we continue to support with money and diplomacy and our military people who basically are as bad as the regime in Iraq that we threw out. The Saudis are murderers. They're 15 of them attacked us on 9/11, and I don't understand the United States' continued support of regimes like this in the Middle East.
Well, Bruce, I appreciate this question, and I'll start by really stating the obvious that there's no simple answer here. There's no simple answer related to how we engage throughout the Middle East, how we continue to engage with our counterterrorism efforts, or diplomatically, economically, or politically speaking. But you raise an interesting question as it relates to Saudi Arabia, and certainly I led an effort. As a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, I led an effort 2 years ago to stop a sale of Paveway missiles to Saudi Arabia. That was under the last administration was put forth as an emergency circumstance sale. In that parameter was a sale made to avoid congressional oversight, and more specifically, congressional approval. And so I challenged that, put forth legislation to challenge it, actually had the support, moved it forward. But ultimately, the administration, we did not have a veto-proof number to be able to challenge the administration on this. But my point is, I echo your concern. We certainly have seen the Saudi government and attack and murder a U.S. Person, so someone living in the United States with legal status, working for the Washington Post, murder him in a consulate abroad, and then absolutely just engage in the most unthinkable of behaviors such as that. So we have challenging, and I don't mean that as an understatement, we have challenging relationships with Saudi Arabia. And I think it's important that the Biden administration and the State Department, and it starts with the top, with the Secretary of State. My hope is that there will be a bit of a reset in the relationship where we make very clear the sort of behavior, the sort of standard that we expect in terms of humanitarian standards and engagement standards with a country like Saudi Arabia. I know that we have a strong partnership at times with Saudi Arabia, focused on our shared counterterrorism efforts, but we really do have a responsibility, and I would argue a right as a nation, to demand more of those who we work so closely with, and particularly those that we sell very important and strategic weapon systems to. So I could literally speak on this issue for quite some time. But I think the general focus that I have as a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee is to continue to push this administration, just as I pushed the last administration, to ensure that we are standing up for American values in the relationships that we pursue with our partners across the Middle East and, frankly, across the rest of the world, and that we are holding them accountable for behaviors that are utterly unacceptable. And then to a larger scale, our engagement in the Middle East, it needs to be focused on diplomacy. It needs to be focused on intelligence gathering, intelligence sharing, and particularly as we are withdrawing our troops from Afghanistan, as we've certainly changed our posture significantly as it pertains to Iraq. Now is an important time for our Department of State to do significant resetting in terms of forceful and focused diplomatic engagement in the region.
Our next caller is a small business owner from Mitchell. Diana Lynn Wilkins is on the line. Hi, Diana. Thank you for calling.
Hi. I'm actually calling from Nottoway County in reference to, I guess, what's going on in our world with small businesses. We've stayed open the entire time that many businesses have closed, and we've been subjected to some pretty harsh treatment and restrictions that in some instances were very necessary. We're now facing added debt in that we were forced to accept SBA assistance, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. We don't have anybody willing to forgive a lot of the money that we've had to take on in order to keep our small business open and offer jobs to our community. My question for you is, what are your intentions to provide for those of us that have worked nonstop? My employees that I've tried to give additional money to give benefits to. What are you going to do to help us? I get tired of seeing things on the news about, benefits being paid out to people that are not willing to work. I have an entire staff of people working with no benefits other than doing something great for their community and being part of something bigger than what's going on down the road. What's your intentions for those of us who have not stopped?
Well, Diana, thank you so much for this question. It would be lovely to find out additional information about your business, and specifically what I have done to support small businesses across Virginia, across our district, has been from the earliest days support, voting for, helping to work on the Paycheck Protection Program, which was an important program, has been an important program to so many small business owners across Central Virginia and across the rest of the country. In addition to that, supported legislation for the emergency injury disaster loan for small businesses that needed additional support to stay open, to stay afloat. For businesses in the food service industry, we had the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, which is a bill to support restaurants, food trucks, distilleries, breweries, and tailored to their specific needs. So since the beginning of the pandemic, the way that I, as a federal legislator, have been focused on supporting our small businesses is by ensuring that they had support in the terms of funding, be it through grants or through loans and forgivable loans, in order to be able to stay afloat, whether they had to close their doors or were able to keep them open. I also have drafted legislation and led legislation of a bill called the Support for New Workers Act, focused on ensuring a strengthened workforce. It's backed by the Virginia Chamber of Commerce, and it's in the U.S. Chamber of Commerce as well, focused on ensuring that we can get people back into the workforce and support them in their transition between jobs or back into the workforce if they've been unemployed for some time. But if there's specific questions to your business and the scope of what it is that you've been eligible for, be it PPP, EIDL, or any other federal support, I'd be happy to follow up with you after this call to make sure that you have received the support that for which you or your business are eligible.
Congresswoman, we'll get to another online question here in just a moment. But before we do that, I wanted to get Michelle on the phone with you from Kent Store. Hi, Michelle. Thank you for holding for the Congresswoman.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. Congresswoman, you mentioned with the infrastructure, the expansion of the broadband, and said something about expediting the.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get the timeline of it.
Yes, ma'am.
And I was wondering, we've been told it's been going to be like a year or so before we can get it. And I'm questioning you about this because in our house we have like 2 people who have chronic illnesses. And because we can't get a landline because of where we live, and we have spotty cell phone service, since we don't have broadband, we can't even call out sometimes. So I couldn't even call for a ambulance if my daughter had a seizure. So I was just wondering, what kind of timelines are we possibly looking at, if you know that?
Well, so I would have to look into anything specific to Kent Store, but I will say that there's a couple pieces here. So the American Rescue Plan is a bill that we passed in the spring, meant at really investing in our communities as we build out of COVID. So much of that had support to our localities, support to public schools, support to small businesses, as I mentioned in my answer to the last question. And what we have here in Virginia is that the governor and the state legislature has allocated, I believe the number is $700 million of that American Rescue Plan money to the state program for broadband deployment. So that's what's already currently happening. And because those funds are there, what some of the localities are doing is beginning on the early side to start planning for their broadband build outs. And some of that, and this does vary county to county, but with the knowledge that the state is making these significant investments, again, with the federal dollars, this is expediting the timeline. And so, and then I'll get to the infrastructure bill piece of it in a minute. So the Commonwealth of Virginia had been on a trajectory to have universal broadband access, so access to internet everywhere in our community. And for the folks on the line from Henrico and Chesterfield, you may not be aware that there are portions of the 7th District where people like Michelle literally cannot get internet in their home. No matter how much they want to pay for it, they can't get internet in their home. And this is much like electricity was 100 years ago. We need to have this as a real priority for our country. It's an economic issue, as Michelle mentioned. It's a health issue for our agricultural community. It's really a farming issue, of course, for our students. It's important to their learning, and not to mention the implications for small business or medium and large size businesses. So because of this investment, the state has increased its trajectory to broadband deployment across the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. It was estimated to be complete in 2028, and now they have brought those years forward, I believe in 2024 or 2025. So they've been able to plan for a build out faster. What that means for you, Michelle, in Kent Store, I don't have a timeline. I'm happy to follow up and look into it, but we do not have a timeline. With the infrastructure bill also prioritized broadband connectivity. And so this is the other piece of that puzzle. And it will be sending funding directly to states to do what Virginia is doing now and will continue to do, which is pursue broadband connectivity across the state. Frankly, in places where there just is not a business interest to bring it, in rural communities where houses are spread out, it hasn't been done by the private sector, and there really needs to be engagement with our communities, both local and federal. So I know that doesn't give you a time frame, Michelle, but I hope that makes clear why some of the progress that we've made recently is at least putting us on a faster path towards getting you internet.
If you're one of the thousands of Virginians joining us this evening for this interactive telephone town hall, reminder, it is interactive. We'd love to hear from you. If you have a question, simply press *3 on your telephone keypad to ask your question live, or you can type your question in right below the streaming player if you're streaming online, and just put in your name and the nature of your question. That's what Ryan Williams did. This question comes to you, Congresswoman, from Ryan Williams. Do you plan to vote for the infrastructure bill? And then why or why not?
So the bipartisan Infrastructure and Jobs Act passed the United States Senate with 69 votes. It had broad support across party lines and across traditional ideological sectors. It makes fantastic investments in our nation's physical infrastructure. And when it comes before the House, I look forward to voting for it. I have been an advocate to get this bill to the House floor. We do not yet have a date named for when this bill will come before us, but I am excited to vote for it because it is substantial investment in the roads, bridges, broadband, electrical grid, the list goes on and on. And it's a job creating bill that will put people across Virginia and certainly across the country to work. So I look forward to casting my vote for the bill title is the Bipartisan Infrastructure and Jobs Act. And I support infrastructure, I support jobs, and I look forward to voting for it when we bring it forth, hopefully in the very near term.
Our next caller is from Goochland. Joe Harpole is on the line. Hi, Joe. Thank you for holding. You're live with Congresswoman Spanberger.
Good evening, Congresswoman. I'm a healthcare provider and do virtually 100% online telemedicine. Recently, we've had a hack, and we're hacked from outside sources, and would like to know what the government is going to do about cybersecurity for broadband and the like for industry, including healthcare in Virginia, to help protect from being targeted by people from Russia or wherever outside of the country.
So, Mr. Harpole, I want to say thank you first and foremost. I think that this has certainly been a challenging year for our healthcare providers, so I thank you for all that you do. I thank you for also mentioning the importance of broadband and internet connectivity as it relates to providing healthcare to community members across Virginia. And you spoke about something that is a focus of mine, which is cybercrime and hacking. And I would say that there's a couple different things that I have done in this space. First and foremost, many crimes currently go unreported or untracked. And so I think many people listening might have heard about the SolarWinds hack. There's been a couple of more notable cyber hacks that have made it into the public purview, most notably recently when we saw gas lines were shut down in the Colonial Pipeline. But in fact, so many of these hacking efforts go unreported. Businesses pay the ransom and get back to doing business. And so I introduced a bill, the Better Cybercrime Metrics Act. It's a bipartisan, bicameral bill. I introduced it in the House. We've got 2 senators, a Republican and a Democrat, leading it in the Senate. And it really gets to the very basics, which is understanding the scope of who's getting attacked, when, why, etc. That's important. Another effort that I have undertaken is so many of these hacks occur because they're financially motivated. And so I led an effort to ensure that there's additional funding to FinCEN, which is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. And the purpose there being, if these cyber crimes, these hacking efforts, these ransomware attacks are in fact orchestrated to extort money, if we make it much harder for them to then money launder their ill-gotten gains, then we do help to crack down on the overall circumstance. And then I have another piece of legislation that I'm working on right now. We haven't introduced it yet, but it's forthcoming, really focused on the fact that we know that state actors, Russia, China, Iran, give safe harbor to transnational criminal networks that are perpetrating so many of these attacks. And so I have a bill that's focused on getting at that challenge, in fact, putting some responsibility on countries like Russia or China if they are housing and funding and allowing these criminal networks to go unchecked and unchallenged, then that's an issue that this piece of legislation will contend with.
Our next caller for you this evening, Catherine Glover, is on the line. Hi, Catherine. Appreciate your patience this evening, and thank you for joining us. Hi, Catherine. Can you hear me, Catherine?
Hello.
So, Governor, let me just, are you there, Catherine?
I am.
Okay, go right ahead, ma'am. Thank you.
Sort of off the wall of everything else you've been talking about, but I'm highly concerned about my granddaughter who is too young to be vaccinated and is required to attend in-person school because the county school filled up so fast. I'm just curious about A, why they're not able to be vaccinated yet, and B, why there aren't more options to keep them safer.
So, Ms. Catherine, thank you so much for this question. I have 3 children, and 2 of them are too young to be vaccinated. So I certainly understand your concern and your worry related to your granddaughter. I share it. And I have personally, as a parent, some trepidation about, ensuring that my children can remain safe, especially as we see the Delta variant, which is so highly contagious, sweeping through so many communities. And so a couple things here. The last update that I have gotten related to children being vaccinated is the trials are ongoing, and there's progress being made. I am so anxious for the vaccine to be approved for children under the age of 12. And there are broad estimates that will occur this fall. And certainly, when we have more information about the rollout of those vaccinations, I look forward to sharing it with constituents. But broadly speaking, what continues to be communicated to us is that will occur this fall. In speaking with the governor's office and with state officials, we have now in place the experience of being able to roll out vaccines and ensure the availability. So I think the thing I'm looking forward to is that when vaccines are available, we should expect it to be an easier deployment to children as they become eligible than at the very beginning stages when it was very, very difficult to get a vaccine in the supply chain. To some of the earlier questions were far more limited. In terms of safety in schools, from a federal perspective, my focus has been ensuring that our school districts have everything they need to ensure a safe, secure, both for the physical health of children, but also for the emotional and mental health and well-being of children. I just visited Glen Allen High School in Henrico County with Secretary of Education Cardona. Governor Northam joined us, and we were joined by the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Cashwell, who spoke with us at length about the efforts that Henrico County has taken. And for those in other counties, I've spoken with leaders in different counties, and I'm excited to see the real planning and effort that has been implemented. But in this specific example, when we had this conversation just a couple days ago, it was talking about how the dollars from the American Rescue Plan is being utilized throughout the county. And across our 10 counties, the dollars are being utilized to hire additional counselors, to hire teachers to help with learning loss, and interns to help with learning loss. Certainly to augment the physical structure of buildings if there's additional spacing that needs to occur in classrooms. Certainly to improve the ventilation systems within our school systems. And we have, while not all kids were back in school full time last year, across the 10 counties that I represent, the counties were all open, some with some closures along the way, some with non-traditional schedules. But certainly our schools have been well practiced at spacing students, keeping them safe. And from a federal perspective, I'm proud that we were able to provide so much financial support so that they can implement the mitigation strategies necessary to keep students safe and also ensure long-term we're meeting their learning needs. So any educators on the line, I thank you for all that you do. This has certainly been a very difficult year and a half. And as a parent of 3 school-age children, I am just so grateful for the educators who have kept this year, the past year and a half, as normal as possible for their students in very extraordinary times.
Congresswoman Cecil Gordon joins us next. Hi, Cecil. Thank you for holding and calling in this evening.
Thank you for listening. The answer I got wasn't to the question that I asked. One thing, I do not read or write computer language, but my question is, I've been waiting for a letter from the United States Postal Service from Troy, Michigan, since the 29th of July, and I haven't gotten it yet. And I was wondering, what can I do to help the United States Postal Service get the mail through? That's one of my questions.
Okay. Well, sir, I would love to answer this question. So the Postal Service certainly over the past year, I don't mean to use the term supply chain issues too many times, but certainly the Postal Service itself is kind of the foundation of supply chain when it comes to delivering mail. Has faced real challenges. Certainly, some of it's made the news in the past year and a half. The positive news that I would mention here is that the board for the United States Postal Service is finally on its way to being back to complement. So it was not fully appointed, which is to some degree, I would argue, not putting the prioritization that needs to be put on the Postal Service. And I would say that years ago, when I was not years ago, last year, feels like years ago, I was in Orange County. And I was in the county, and a gentleman walked by, and he was out delivering mail on the weekend. And he took his hat off, and he said, we are the United States Postal Service. We are about service. We're about serving our community. We're about ensuring that people get the support that they need, the letters that they need. And I keep that anecdote with me because I think it speaks to the caliber and the dedication of so many who work for the Postal Service. Certainly, I have had and have voiced concerns with the Postmaster General, Mr. DeJoy, that he has made decisions along the way that have throttled mail delivery, that have impeded mail delivery. And I have made every effort to hold him accountable along the way. I've visited postal facilities, but there still continues to be challenges at this point. And so generally speaking, what you as an individual can do is keep prioritizing the Postal Service. Raising it with my office is a way for me to have the marching orders from the people I serve, constituents such as you, to be able to follow up and continue holding the Postmaster General accountable to ensure that as their board becomes fully appointed, that perhaps we see improvements. But if there's a specific challenge that you as a constituent are facing with the Postal Service, I also welcome you to call my office, recount your specific story. And in some cases, it's helpful for me to understand the scope of the challenge. And in some cases, it might be an issue that we may be able to assist you with. But I appreciate that question.
Our next caller this evening is from Chesterfield. Clifford Knittel is on the line. Hi, Clifford. Thank you for joining us for this live interactive telephone town hall. Hi, Clifford.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Good. Thank you, Abigail. I first had a comment on the broadband. I heard that broadband, Dominion's looking into helping communities with broadband, so you might want to partner if you haven't already. They're very philanthropic, I don't know. But they help the communities. Mm-hmm. The second thing is, my question is, would you consider, instead of like the message of defunding police, if we want reform, can we like offer them increased pay, increased benefits, increased training, so we're kind of bolstering the police?
So Clifford, I really appreciate this question. I've been vocal on this issue, sometimes less polite than I normally would be, on the notion that I do not support defunding the police. I support our community's police departments, and they're a vital component of public safety. Those who choose to serve their community do important work. And what you suggest, actually, Clifford, is something that I have been working on. there are many programs from the federal perspective, which of course is where I have purview, related to supporting our local police departments. And so I'm working on a bill in its end stages, and I look forward to celebrating when we introduce it, that is focused on not just funding the police, but increasing funding to our police departments through a program called the COPS program that allows localities to apply for federal support for hiring, for training, and ensures that they have on the ground what they need in order to be fully staffed. One of the challenges with this program, frankly, is that it disadvantages rural communities in the formulary that it's used to award these grant dollars. And so the legislation I'm working on would change that, not to disadvantage larger communities, because of course I represent them as well, but in fact to just even the playing field and not have that formulary or formula disadvantage our rural communities. But overall, to what you're saying, from a federal perspective, my goal is to ensure that there's additional federal support for hiring, for training, and for maintaining that workforce, yes, through salary. I think that I appreciate your comments. I agree with you completely. And I have worked on other pieces of legislation also in this space to ensure that, I have a bill called Measuring What Matters. And it's a piece of legislation that is focused on ensuring that police departments across the country can look beyond crime statistics as a way to measure their success. And so I'm introduced a piece of legislation. It's bipartisan, and I'm very, very proud of it. And hopefully that will be able to have impact. Another thing that I'll note, and I know that we're coming up on time, is one of the things that I've heard from the law enforcement community, from the police departments and sheriff's departments that are in the 7th District, is the real challenge that they're facing as they continue to support and contend with individuals who may be challenged by mental health challenges, or those who are suffering from substance use disorder. And so I have focused on how can we support those with a substance use disorder so that it is not just the police that are the ones who are on the first line of response, that those who are in recovery have the support that they need, and so that they're getting that support, and that it's not always a law enforcement issue when someone with a substance use disorder needs support, or someone with a mental health issue needs support. And as an example, I introduced legislation to have in the substance abuse block grants, so federal dollars that go to communities, to have a 10% set aside in those dollars that's dedicated solely to recovery support and recovery related programs. So we've got education, we've got treatment when people are in that point of crisis, but we also need to support them through their long-term recovery. And frankly, I will give credit where credit is due. That piece of legislation firmly came to me through my discussions with Sheriff Leonard, who's the sheriff in Chesterfield County, and his extraordinary efforts within the jail to provide support, treatment, and recovery services to the individuals who are in the Chesterfield jail who are suffering from substance use disorder and addiction, and recognizing that need to support them once they get out of the jail system, once they get out of the criminal justice system, to ensure that they are able to support their own recovery and long-term stay in it, so that they don't have a relapse of some sort that might put them back in Sheriff Leonard's jail. So I'm proud of that piece of legislation, continuing to push it. And while it's focused on those in recovery, certainly the significant benefit is to ensuring that our police officers can go back to the day-to-day of being in the communities and focus on public safety as their primary focus. So thank you for that question.
Congresswoman, you're right. Time flies when you have so many great questions coming in, and that was all the time we had for our question and answer portion of this interactive telephone town hall. But I just wanted to go back to you with any final thoughts you might want to share before we do this again.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I want to express my appreciation for everyone who listened in online, or everyone who joined us on the telephone. it is my pleasure to answer your questions, to be accountable to you, the people that I represent. I'm really excited about the scope and the breadth of questions that we had today, really wide ranging. So thank you very much for tuning in. As always, I welcome anyone with questions to be in touch with our office. The number is on our website. Our website is spanberger.house.gov. And that is my congressional website, spanberger.house.gov. It has our phone numbers for our Henrico, Spotsylvania, and Washington, D.C. offices. And we also send out a newsletter once a week that gives anybody who's on it an update about the work that I'm doing on Capitol Hill, the work that my team is doing on your behalf, and certainly the work that we're doing back home in Central Virginia. So I hope you'll consider signing up because we do provide very useful information about legislation and things occurring across the Commonwealth. As we do face these challenging times with the uptick in the Delta variant of the coronavirus, I wish everyone the very best. I hope that you're all staying safe. And I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to answer questions today. I look forward to our next town hall. And when it is safe to have large groups of people crowded in high school auditoriums, I am so looking forward to being back in person with you all and answering your questions face to face. But until that day, I enjoy these telephone town halls, certainly the ability to reach people across our 10 counties without anyone having to have a long commute. And I'm grateful for the chance to be able to answer your questions. If there's anything else that you need help with, please, our office is here to serve you. I am in this job to serve you, and I'm grateful for that responsibility and opportunity. Have a good night, everyone, and thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you, Congresswoman, and thanks to all of you for joining us for this important Central Virginia-focused telephone town hall with Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger. We appreciate the opportunity to answer your questions, but if we were unable to get to your specific question this evening, you can call our office at 804-401-4110, or again, visit spanberger.house.gov. Thank you again, stay safe, and have a great evening.